Good morning, you got Gord. You're hurt and happy. Hey friends, let's talk edibles. Let's talk food. I am sorry I'm forgetting who asked me to talk about this one. I usually try to give a shout out to the person who did it. I wrote it down. I forgot. Anyways, I have had more than one person ask me to talk about edibles, as many things that I can get out as edibles. So let's start with the idea that you're a rookie. Let's start with that. You're a rookie, you've never had an edible, you want to try it. The most important thing is to plan it around the time that you're with somebody and that it's evening. You don't have, or a day where you don't have to go anywhere and you've got somebody to help you out, because you never know your reaction. Reactions are a very personal thing. They follow certain patterns, but they can fluctuate wildly. So first things first, be sure to have a day where you're not going to need your wits about you for the next 4 to 6 hours. So that's why I say an evening, early evening, around 5 o'clock, as long as you've got all your ducks in a row, take an edible. Now, most of my talk about edibles will be about me eating something infused with cannabis. There is sublingual edibles, tinctures and other oils that you put under your tongue. Sublingually, you get that immediately. It enters your bloodstream and you get the reaction immediately. It's a very edible reaction, not a smoking reaction. Let me say the difference between the two. Edible reaction, edible high, is much more body, much less mind, very calming, very sleepy-like, where much less in the brain than in the body, but still in the brain, where the opposite is true with smoking it. So that's the first things first. Second is dosing. Dosing is a really important point to make. People tend to have bad reactions because they dose too high on their first time. You need to take the smallest dose possible. I usually say anywhere between 10 and 15 milligrams. So if you buy a 100 milligram chocolate bar, chop it into 10 pieces. And at 5 o'clock, take one piece. Note the time, 10 milligrams. If you feel that you've got a strong ability to get high, take 15, maybe 20, but don't go much higher than that, because the first day may not be as enjoyable as you had hoped, because the first day you want to take as little as possible so you know your dose. So 10 or 20 milligrams around 5 o'clock. Now empty your full stomach. Especially your first time, eat it with food. Eat it with food. Or eat food first, then eat it. It will calm the high. It'll make it a little less. If you have an empty stomach, the high comes quicker, and which I'll talk about in a second, and it's stronger. So your first time, have some food in your tummy. But it's okay to do it with an empty stomach. Let me say that. But even with those of you, before I move on to the next point, those of you who do take it with an empty stomach, still take it with a little bit of sugar, a little bit of fat, something for it to bind to. Otherwise, your efficacy of THC will lower. The more fats or sugar for THC to bind to, the more will pass through your liver instead of going the other way. Now, you've taken it. It's your first hit. Maybe it's not your first hit. Doesn't matter. Now it's anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hour wait. For me, my body clock is so on the 2 hour mark. If I take it at 5 o'clock, it's right about 7. I'm noticing the effects. Mark it down or take specific note. Watch the clock. Don't don't be nervous. Don't be nervous. Maybe even don't watch the clock, but set a timer for 90 minutes. Shouldn't be prior to that. Some people have a really fast metabolism, might even be an hour, but most people, it's around an hour and a half to 2 hours, especially if you've eaten. And then feel it come on. Sit back, relax, play some music, have some coffee. They also say black pepper will calm it down if it's a little bit too much for you. But if you followed my advice at 10 milligrams, it's not going to be too much. Notice how it feels. It will last you. You'll have another kind of peak at 4 hours and another peak at 6. Each peak being a little less than the first at 2. Usually around the 6 hour mark, it's titrating off and it's almost done. Now you've got an experience from which to dose. If that 10 milligrams was beautiful, you don't take any more. If it was too strong, you take a little less. If it barely hit you or didn't hit you, double it next time. You got to take it from there. It's a very personal thing. I'm not sure what else I missed on edibles. If you don't know the milligrams of the edibles, don't eat them. Don't buy stuff that people aren't willing to take the time to understand how many milligrams they're giving you. They need to give you complete breakdown. And don't eat more than you should. And don't eat again at the 2 hour mark, because it's just going to pile it on top, and then you could have a difficulty. What happens if you green out? I call it green out. What happens if you green out? What happens if you get a little sick from eating? You get too high or you get that dizzy feeling. Lay down. Just go lay down. Well, my friends, I hope that works for you. Peace and cheers, love and harmony.